If you're like me, when you heard of the game Naughty Bear, you thought, is this anything like Pedo Bear? Well, kind of, I guess. Released on June 29th for the Xbox 360 and PS3, Artificial Mind and Movement in 505 Games' latest action-adventure title gives us something we certainly haven't seen before in a video game. While along the same lines as perhaps Fairy Tail Fights, Naughty Bear has you hacking and slashing a crapload of teddy bears, replacing blood and gore with stuffing and stitches, and should put a smile on your face, at least the first few times you come up with creative ways to decimate your foes. But the enjoyment is very short-lived, as things get pretty stale after the first hour or so. Currently at the list price of $50, here's Naughty Bear.
Who's this? Oh look, it's Naughty Bear.
There actually isn't really too much of a story in the game. Basically, you play as social outcast Naughty Bear, living on a tropical island with a bunch of other fluffy bears, and everyone and their mom hates you, and you want nothing more than to just be friends with everyone. Beyond that, there isn't too much to it, and there's no story progression. There are 7 levels, and each are kind of episodic, or rather, they don't tell an entire story, they just portray events in Naughty's life, with no real conclusion after you've completed them. It's really a shame because the ground was set for a truly wonderful story, it just, for one reason or another, wasn't implemented.
You better be careful, Naughty Bear.
Naughty Bear is actually an extremely short game if you want to get through the episodic story. There's only 7 levels spread out over only 4 zones that are all interconnected. Each level has 5 different challenges, giving you a total of 35 different missions, all spread out over those same 4 zones, though you only need to complete a very small number of them before you can actually see the game's ending cinematic. I probably only spent about 5 hours playing before I reached this point. As you play, you're rated on your performance with bronze, silver, gold, and platinum trophies, and upon collecting a certain number of each, additional challenges and levels will become unlocked for you. Thankfully, the game has built-in multiplayer. Or does it? At the time of this review, I was unable to connect to a single multiplayer match, nor host one myself. After doing some research on the internet, it appears as though this problem is not unique to me, and many people can't play any multiplayer games. I've read people trying 100 times and getting into a match a mere 4 times. They say it's super fun once you get in, but I've got to imagine they're extremely biased, having just dropped $50 for a game and spending hours to get into a match. It better appear to be goddamn fun. Well, if you're lucky enough to get into a game, you have a few game types that actually look interesting, but again, you're forced to play the same 4 levels from the campaign. Blah. In addition to not being able to get into a game, the multiplayer lobby is simply terrible. There's no countdown timer, so you're literally forced to wait for the room to fill up with players, then wait for each to hit the ready button, and if even one of them is AFK, which they always are, you have to sit and wait for them to get back. The multiplayer was clearly tacked on as an afterthought to sell more copies. On top of this, the damn game freezes all the time. I had to reboot my 360 every hour or so playing through this. At least the game looks fun, right? Who doesn't like running around with a machete stabbing the stuffing out of mean little teddy bears? Well, okay, it is pretty fun to come up with clever ways to take out your enemies, but it gets stale pretty quickly. This is more of an arcade game than an action game, as the objective is to score as many points as possible by doing naughty things, be it killing bears, destroying cakes, or scaring the crap out of everyone. Each of the 7 levels offers you a new weapon which spices things up a bit, but the sub-levels have you simply replaying the game just a little differently each time. In one mission you may score X amount of points by simply scaring the bears, one may have you hide and not be seen the entire match, and the other may be a speed run, but it's always the exact same levels and the exact same enemies. Combat consists of simply mashing the X button over and over until you're able to pull off a fatality, which is entertaining the first few times you see it, but each weapon only has a single fatality animation. There's just very little variety in this entire game. On top of that, the camera is terrible, unless of course you're out in the open, but the bears always hide inside, and the second you get anywhere remotely close to a building, it goes haywire. So, while the gameplay is terribly repetitious, at least there are some goals that are kind of difficult that you can waste your time on. To unlock all the levels, you need to obtain a ton of gold trophies, which is going to take some patience. Along with the level unlocks, there's also costumes that spice things up, giving you different statistics per costume, allowing you to customize your bear, if you will, for the particular mission.
What on earth is that, Naughty Bear?
At least Naughty Bear has one saving grace. The game's presentation is pretty good. The graphics are kinda cartoony and look pretty decent, but the game's death animations are awesome and really funny. Hell, if you scare a bear enough, he'll go insane and kill himself with whatever weapon he's currently carrying. If another bear happens to see that, he may do the same. That's just awesome. Unfortunately though, there's only a single animation and a single sound effect for scaring things. It's always the same boo and the same arms in the air. That could have been greatly improved upon considering how often you have to use it. The game's music is very reminiscent of horror movies of our past, which is interesting, and the game's sound effects are funny at times, but the real star of the presentation is the voice acting of the narrator, who is in turn the only voice actor in the game. The way he sets up Naughty Bear for all of his devious deeds is hilarious, and it feels good to have him cheer you on as you beat the snot out of the enemies.
He must have invited them over for the evening. Were you invited, Naughty? Oh dear, poor Naughty. They never invite you, do they?
Now, it's not like me to give a really bad review, because for the most part I really enjoy playing games and think that most games are actually pretty good, but this one has some serious flaws to it. I guess I feel this title would have been better suited as an Xbox Live downloadable game than a feature-length $50 title. While it does have the inner workings to be a great cult classic, it still needs a lot of work for me to recommend it at its current price. If they fix the multiplayer, it might merit being picked up in the bargain bin a few weeks from now, assuming of course anyone's still even trying to play the online at that point. I know a lot of you said the game looked amazing from my gameplay videos. What are your thoughts now? Leave your questions and comments below. Check out the full write-up, screenshots, and gameplay footage over at ZeitgeistGameReview.com. Stay up to date by following me on Twitter and check out my other channel, Zeitgeist Other, for gameplay footage. Don't forget to subscribe and press the thumbs up button. Thanks for watching.